Sly! Come in!
The Sly Cooper games are one of those franchises you hear about in passing, and if you haven't played them, you give them an interesting head nod as your friend talks about it, and then you move on. Maybe you entertain them, not wanting to be rude, and you ask what it's about, and they tell you that you play as an anthropomorphic raccoon who comes from a line of thieves, and he has two friends who travel with him. One is a turtle and the other is a hippo. And you hear this and conclude that your friend is obviously doing a lot of potent drugs, and you want in. Now, of course, I'm being funny. You can break down any game that's simply and say it sounds silly, because it kind of does, to be honest. Without context, you might not understand what the hell anyone is talking about. So for me, I finally got around to starting up the collection of the original 3 games. I played the first game in the franchise, Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus.
Oh, you're lucky, Sly! This page features Karen Cooper-Giwa's coin magnet technique. All she had to do was...
Before I go any further, I do want to make a technical note and say that I played it on PS Now on PC, and I know when compared to Game Pass, PS Now barely comes close to being as all-encompassing and streamlined and even popular. But PS Now is not totally without merit, and it allowed me to go back and play this nearly 20-year-old title. The game played and responded fairly well, but as has been reported with PS Now for a while, there are some stutters and parts where the game lags, which caused me to throw Sly into the fiery depths of hell unintentionally, and this would happen at such an inopportune time. That being said, the game functioned fairly well, and I don't have any major complaints about its performance. Anyway, beyond that, we're here to discuss one thing, and it's this. Does Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus still hold up? Again, we're gonna try not to apply modern day standards to an 18-year-old game. That would be really silly. More productive, I think, is to ask if this game holds up still after all this time. How are the controls, the art style, sound, gameplay, and even its writing? Does this game hold up? Now, I can probably guess you might be screaming at your screen telling me, "Of course it does, Ryan. Shut up. Stop talking." Or you're simply wondering when I'll actually talk about the game instead of giving you vague concepts and ideas and continuing this sentence beyond normal limits just to be funny because it's more annoying to you than anything. Okay, so you play as Sly Cooper, a raccoon who is descended from a family of thieves. Though they only steal from other criminals and thieves, it makes them vigilantes. They have a book where they chronicled all their skills and tactics one would need to be a master thief, the Thievius Raccoonus. When Sly turned 8 years old, he was supposed to inherit the Thievius Raccoonus, but a gang of criminals known as the Fiendish Five, led by none other than Clockwork, the arch nemesis of the Cooper family, steals all of its pages. This leads Sly to hone his thieving skills over the years and concoct a plan to stop the criminals and restore the Thievius Raccoonus to its former glory. Okay, and that's pretty much it. You can imagine where the story goes from there. It's simple, but it's fun. It's not as densely plotted or written as, say, the Witcher games, or to give an example from a game that released around the same time, Knights of the Old Republic, but it doesn't need to be. Sly Cooper is a fun tale that doesn't take itself too seriously, and it works. Not having played Sly Cooper before, I didn't really have any expectations of what this game would be like. It turns out, all in all, Sly Cooper is more of a collect-a-thon type platformer than I anticipated. And that's not a knock against it. I really do like that style of platformer, and while obstacles will frequently have you getting around security cameras, avoiding alarms, jumping into barrels to avoid turrets, avoiding trip lasers, and even enemies, there's really only a basic level of stealth applied to the experience. Like, yeah, you're technically being stealthy, but it never feels like you're actually stealthy, so much as just avoiding obstacles as you platform through the game. Now, I do have to remind myself that this game is from 2002, and it is the first game in a franchise, so I'm not really holding it against the game, but it definitely does not feel like a stealth platformer. At least, what you imagine a stealth platformer to be like when you think about it. Like, some of the boss battles are just straight up battles, with really no stealth elements applied, which is not the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely not making use of Sly Cooper's premise or themes. For example, I started Sly Cooper 2 Band of Thieves, and I already feel like that's more of a stealth platformer, as it differentiates itself a lot more and it's more complex in its application of stealth gameplay, while still being easy to pick up and play. So, the Thievius Raccoonus, despite not being wholly unique as far as 3D platforming goes, is very easy to pick up and play, run, jump, attack, all with the press of a button. Unlock abilities to give yourself an easier time and even challenge yourself to zip through levels as fast as you can. There's definitely something about Sly Cooper that makes it delightful to play without being overly taxing. Some levels even involve races with Murray, which does well to break up the pace of the gameplay, or maybe you'll even take command of a vehicle as Sly with levels that are basically rail shooters. It's all a blast, but again, never feels like it's living up to the hype that Sly is sneaking around and being a stealth master thief. A master thief of stealth. A thief. Stealth. Steve from Blue's Clues. What? It doesn't make it bad, it just means that it's not entirely the type of game that you should worry about if you're bad at stealth, or expect to be more complex about its stealth aspect. Now, as with a lot of platformers, you get lives, you only have a certain amount, and I don't really get the purpose of them in this game. If you lose them all, you just get to restart the level with a fresh set of lives. Then again, lives in any game is a bit silly when you put it that way. You can collect coins, but there's not much use for them beyond giving you a bit of a damage buff, so you can take 1 or 2 more hits from enemies. Visually, obviously, this game is 20 years old. It's a PS2 game, remastered or re-released for PS3, and it's playable on PS Now. It's not going to even look close to a late-gen PS3 game or an early-gen PS4 game. So talking about graphics is kind of a useless endeavor, and the obvious answer to if that aspect of the game holds up is a resounding no. That's not a knock against the title, it's just a fact. Hence why with these older games I like to talk more about their art style, because arguing that this has next-gen graphics is kind of like how your friend who describes the talking raccoon game sounds to you. Crazy. The art direction is really distinct. One of the things I admire about Sucker Punch in their games, including back to Sly Cooper here, one of their first games, is that you get the impression that their characters almost pop out of different mediums to be playable and accessible to you, the player. In Infamous, years later, it feels like the characters literally popped out of a comic book, and in Sly Cooper, it feels like they popped out of a cartoon animation. It's really fun, and it speaks to how the game just atmospherically still doesn't feel like anything else out there. And I'm not kidding. Some cutscenes even have that type of old cartoon animation, so when you do see Sly and the other characters, it does legitimately feel like they jumped off the screen and into this 3D world. It's really cool. Now obviously, I like anyone else appreciates good audio, but I'm not necessarily in that world, so when I listen to games or movies or TV shows, it is really about how I feel in that moment or how the music makes me feel, which is really what it's supposed to do. And the music in Sly Cooper is also quite a standout. Before, when I said the gameplay doesn't really match its stealthy ambitions, that is true. But the music does a really damn good job of making you feel like you're committing a grand old heist. And when you trigger alarm, it speeds up, and it's almost like the game is telling you that you gotta go. Get the hell out of there. Run. Go. What are you doing? Also fun is the sound of Sly walking around when he's trying to be stealthy, as it feels like the plucks of a guitar string. It does make you feel more stealthy than you actually are. Now obviously acting and voice acting has changed a lot over the years, so trying to compare this to a 2020 title or movie or show, it just won't work. But just for this title alone, voices are just the right mixture of cartoonish supervillains and overly confident heroes to make this feel like it's almost paying homage to those tropes without feeling like it's being generic or boring or trying to be something that it isn't.
According to my amphibio positioning system, that big blimp is where Raleigh is hiding out.
You know, that blimp looks more like a machine than a hideout.
You're right, Sly. That is a storm machine. It's the reason why it never stops raining around here.
That explains all the wrecked ships.
But why would Raleigh want bad weather at his own hideout 24/7?
Beats me. But rain or shine, I'm gonna steal my family's book back. And if Raleigh gets in my way, it's on.
None of them feel out of place, and the dynamic that plays between Sly Cooper and Carmelita Fox especially is almost in a way that is actually quite entertaining without being annoying or feeling too cheesy.
And I was gonna give it to you as a little token of my... Hey, you know, that bazooka really brings out the color of your eyes. Very fetching.
You think? This pistol packs a paralyzing punch. You ought to try it. Might snap you out of your crime spree.
And give up our little rendezvous?
Plenty of time for that once you're safely behind bars.
Love to stick around and chat, but I just dropped by to pick up this case file. I think you've had it long enough.
Now obviously the question we're asking here is if the game holds up. You may have an answer to that already before you even watch the video, and that's okay. And I would just say to you that, of course, I agree with you. Yes, it does. But when we talk about a game holding up against time, we all have different ideas about what games do and what games don't. It's easier for you to say one thing while I say another. That being said, this video, and others that I have like it on my channel, aim to be objective as much as possible and discuss very simply what works about a game still like this all these years later, and to not judge it solely with modern eyes. So essentially, the answer is that, of course, Sly Cooper can hold up to you, but not to someone else. But objectively, this game, at least in my opinion, from a mechanics and style standpoint, more than holds its own. Now, you're not going to fool anyone if you try to convince them that it's a 2020 game or a next-gen title, and I would question you if you were trying either way, but it's still easy to recommend to a friend who has never played it. You can still buy the collection for PS3 to play this game if you have one, or maybe you have an old PS2 copy lying around. Go for it. Play it. If not, there is always PS Now, but I recommend playing on your PC if you can. PS Now, that is. If you're able, because while the PS5 is likely out by the time you see this, I just felt my game ran better on my PC with PS Now than on my console. So while Sly Cooper is more of a typical 3D platformer than you might expect, it's stylish, fun, and not too long so you can enjoy all it has to offer in a short time. As always, if you like the video, subscribe. If you don't, subscribe anyway. Hit the thumbs up or the thumb down. Thumbs down. Thumbs. Plural. Maybe leave a comment and tell me what you think. Thank you for watching, and I love you. Maybe.